Hello and welcome back to the Change Cafe. I'm your host Jay. In this episode, I interview Amy Reynolds, facilitator, coach and good friend. We explore what it means to be a great manager during periods of change and uncertainty by better understanding ourselves and how others work to get the very best from them using a personality profiling tool called Insights. I'm so excited to share this interview with you, so get your coffee, shampoos or cocktail and get comfy. I am so glad to finally get you in on the Change Cafe. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you've got a history in the corporate world and there are some reasons why you went into coaching and kind of left that world.
Sure. So I've been self-employed now for, almost 5 years, running my own consultancy. So I do facilitation and coaching. So a mixture of one-to-one work and then also working with teams, really helping people to understand a bit about what makes them tick and then make the most of that and become more effective in their work environment.
Now, I would love for you to, because Insights for me and similar things is hugely insightful in terms of not only understanding myself, but understanding others better so that I could influence and make change in the way that I wanted to. So before we delve into that and what the benefits are, what is Insights? What is it about? And what's the risk of not understanding these things or having insight into these things?
So Insights Discovery is a tool. It's a personality profiling tool that is based on the work of Carl Jung. So lots of these tools like Myers-Briggs, others you may have heard of, often have a similar foundation in that psychology. But for me, really, it's about a framework. So we talk about these 4 colour energies. So there's no such thing as, you're a fiery red person or you're sunshine yellow, because of course we're all unique individuals. And it's not trying to say we're all the same or there are only 4 types of person, but it's about that unique blend of colours that you have. So as I say, you've got these 4 energies. We've got firstly is fiery red, and that's people who are very much direct, task focused, often quite fast paced and action oriented. You've then got sunshine yellow energy. Now, sunshine energy shows up as being very sociable, very friendly, dynamic, can be quite innovative. And then you've got earth green energy. And earth green energy comes across as very caring, patient, relaxed, very encouraging of others. And finally, cool blue energy is all about precision, accuracy, detail, and getting things right. Now, as I say, we're all a mixture of all 4, but there may be 1, 2, or even 3 that come out most strongly for us. And really, they're a measure of your preference. So it's not about how clever you are, not about how nice a person you are, how good you are at your job. It's purely about your behaviour and how you like to show up. And that's the kind of framework, if you like, that people then can use for themselves, for their own self-awareness, to see, well, actually, what does work for me? How do I communicate? What value do I add? Where are those strengths, those weaknesses, maybe some blind spots we're not quite so comfortable with? But then, as you say, it's about, for me, the application around how you then say, well, if this is where I come from, how is that similar or different to somebody else? And it's about recognizing that difference and to an extent celebrating it and saying, well, actually, they have a completely different perspective to me. And it's not right or wrong. It's just different.
I obviously understood that everyone's different, right? I get that everyone's different, but this adds another layer of language and understanding for me. It allowed me to be a bit more tolerant, and by understanding somebody a bit more, even if it was my husband, who is, total opposite to me.
Okay.
And so whereas before we would come up against conflict, and I just don't understand why you cannot see this way. Like, it's so obvious. And that all kind of just, and that pressure just released as well for me, because I was like, now I understand. Yeah. And now I get how I can talk to you. And in the workspace, also influencing people, not manipulating, but influencing them by being able to is it communicating on their level? Like, what is it that it gives you?
I think for me, it's really interesting what you described there, because that is such a common story I hear from people suddenly going like, oh, I see. It's not that they're being intentionally difficult. It's just that what I'm giving them is not what they need, or vice versa. And it happens a lot. And I think for me, the benefit of something like this tool is the fact that it takes all of the sort of personal judgment stuff out. And all of a sudden you go, right, okay, I've almost got a sort of framework to hang this off and to be able to objectively look at the situation rather than coming at it from very much that sort of personal or hurt place of going, well, they should do it like me, and why not? And, you know, like you say, how can you not see it? It's obvious. It's almost that ability to sort of take a bit of a helicopter view, I guess, and not necessarily be able to take a step fully into their shoes, but at least recognise that they come at it from a different angle than you. And I think that ability to sort of desensitise the whole conversation can be a massive game changer for some teams. Because I think, like you say, it's, although we all inherently know people are different, when you're in that moment and someone's really wound you up, or you're really tired, or you're just under pressure, you don't go to that really sort of, you know, considerate place of going, oh, I wonder what it's like for them. Like, you go into sort of defense mode, dig your heels in, elbows out, or maybe that's just me, I don't know. But we do, don't we? And I think what this enables people to do is have that common language. So instead of saying, what you've done annoyed me, it's saying, actually, do you know what? I feel like I haven't got enough cool blue energy today to deal with these sort of questions. So actually, I need to take some time out. Or, you know, it just gives you that framework and language, like I say, to be able to talk about it in a less judgmental way.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things for me, and something that I'm seeing coming up in the Managers Tribe, which is our Facebook group community, is this difficulty with leadership. So difficulty with their managers. So they're managers themselves, but so a lot of the difficulty is coming from either it's the pressures from up above, or dealing with the micromanagement of up above, or it's dealing with, you know, having conflict with their managers, which is as a result having impact on their progression, because your relationship with your manager is going to have a huge impact on that. And you wrote an article which I loved, and we'll definitely share that with the group as well. But you said something that really was quite stood out for me, and it was, despite how frustrating some managers can seem sometimes, I've never met one who is being intentionally difficult to hack off their team. So can you talk about where some of this conflict comes from, and what we can do about it to build those relationships and better communicate with our managers for the benefit of us, really?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. That kind of managing that relationship is really difficult, but also really important. And I think, so that quote I stand by. I don't believe anyone gets out of bed in the morning to think, right, how can I be really awkward today and get everyone riled up? I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I just don't believe that you would. Or if you have done, something really bad's happened as part of that process, perhaps, who knows. But I think for me, it's that element of going, we expect a lot of our managers. And actually, if you're a manager yourself and you think, oh, my team just want all this stuff from me all the time, actually that's essentially what's happening the layer above as well. And the sort of peer group gets smaller and smaller the higher up you go. And actually there's people you can just go and sound off to and talk things through with. Maybe they don't have that network there to be able to share and confide in others. So they feel all that responsibility and pressure that we feel, but even kind of the higher up it goes, I think the more it sort of can build sometimes. And I think there's a few bits for me that often come out with teams in particular. Is one of this bit is around how we process and how we sort of express what's going on. So if you think about extroversion and introversion, so we talk about the idea of extroversion being very much people who are outwardly expressive, they kind of get their energy from other people, and they almost need to talk things through to be able to process. And then the other end of that spectrum, you've got people with high levels of introversion who are much more reflective. They have to really think something through before they can share their idea. And you often find that kind of opposite element can be where some conflict comes from. Because if you're somebody who needs to just talk things through and sound ideas out and not necessarily have the answers, but the process of talking about it will get you to the answer. If you're working with somebody who has the complete opposite preference to that, and actually they need time to go away, assimilate all the data, reflect on what they've heard, and come out with some kind of clear outcomes, then you can see very quickly how that conversation goes downhill. Because the more somebody's not getting the feedback they need, the more questions they ask. Potentially the faster they speak, the more data they throw into it, hoping that will help. And sometimes you physically see people kind of go, whoa, and like recoil out of the conversation. Because actually for them, it's like overload. They go, how can you ask me 15 questions? Let me just answer one. But actually it's often the person's going, oh, and another thing, and hang on, I've just thought about that. And what about this? And they're going, which one of those do I answer? And so there's that element of kind of overload. And again, it's no malintention. It's just that kind of way of processing is quite different. So even things like that can start to become patterns and habits that if you don't reflect on actually that's what you do and that's what they do, then it becomes, oh, why are they responding like this? Why are they being difficult? Rather than what is it about the way I'm communicating that means it's not working for them? Mm-hmm. And I appreciate when we've got a manager, there's an element of going, oh yeah, but they're my boss. They should be able to sort of manage me. Actually, I think we're all humans, and it's about actually having that human connection sometimes and going, okay, what do I need to do to make this a more effective relationship?
I completely agree. And I think making that step change for me of realizing, instead of finger pointing and going, and it's so easy to do, right? We all complain about our managers, and it's all part of like building rapport and social groups, right? We're social animals. That's how we connect sometimes. Okay. It is. A good gossip is sometimes all you need.
Yeah.
But as a result of constantly finger pointing and blaming my manager for everything that I wasn't getting, I was almost giving up my power to them. I was constantly, complaining about what they weren't doing and not focusing on what I could be doing.
Yeah.
And as soon as I made that transition and thought, actually, what can I do to influence or to support my manager? So there's obviously, if they're stressed and that's coming down on me, then I need to manage that. How can I support them in order to help myself? And kind of just turning it around a bit. I stopped finger pointing and I started going, right, what can I do to help this situation in order to help them and help me?
Definitely. Like for me, it's that bit around the kind of circle of control. We're saying, actually, I can either be a victim in this and be done to, or I can say, okay, right, what can I be doing? And it may not fix the complete situation, but at least you feel a bit more in control and a bit more, like you say, taking some of your power back rather than just letting it be someone else's issue. I mean, that being said, don't get me wrong, I do think people should be supported by their managers. I think all managers should be really equipped to have these conversations, but they're not always. And sometimes they're maybe not dealing with those pressures as well as other people are. So it's a question of going, well, what can I be doing to improve that situation? Because ultimately you will benefit as part of that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we're in a bit of a weird situation. It would be silly not to mention the situation that we're in terms of the majority of managers, huge change within their organisations as well as out in the outside environment, managing teams in a different way. I just sort of wondered, what types of things are you seeing at the moment where a bit of insights data and a bit of understanding of this could really help managers for themselves, but also managing their teams?
So you're right, we're in such an unusual time. And I know that sounds really cliche, but we are. And I guess a lot of the work we look at normally is around how you manage change and people through a kind of BAU change process, in that it's a project or it's a finite restructure, whereas actually what we're going through now is completely all consuming. So it's all parts of our life have had some sort of change impact. And I think depending on your preference will depend on almost what the trigger is for you to have that like stress response to the change. So for example, if you are, say, somebody who leads with a lot of fiery red energy and you like to be in control and like to have a plan and be able to make fast decisions and move forward towards goals and targets, if all of a sudden you don't have any control anymore, it's either been taken away from you or the situation is such that actually it's not your control to have. And it can be really frustrating, and you can almost see people like grabbing at anything to take some control back, just to sort of satisfy that need to get their hands around something. So it could be a project that normally they wouldn't be bothered about, they suddenly go really deep into and want all the information, and that almost like micromanaging can kick in. But it often comes from a place of needing some control over something. Then I guess the other side, you think about, for example, sunshine yellow energy, that need for connection, involvement, feeling part of a team. All of a sudden, if you're somebody who loves being sociable in the heart of the action and conversation, and you're now sat at home on your own staring at the walls, that can be a real kind of trigger for some challenging behaviour. And it can almost go the other way of people going, I need to connect, and becoming so over involved that they're always the person chatting on the phone, or they feel that need to do even more of that, when actually not everyone needs to be on the receiving end. And maybe it's not the right thing for their energy either, but it's almost that need for it. Think about that earth green energy, that really empathic, caring, kind of looking after everybody else approach. it means they can often almost like take on other stress that isn't theirs to have. So they can become incredibly worried about the wider community, or making sure that everyone else is okay and looked after, and that they got their resilience levels built up, and actually who's looking after them. So I think it's a real one to just watch out for, I guess, is that if you are somebody who loves to support others and care and help, it's actually, well, how are you, my favourite expression is always, you can't pour from an empty cup. And actually it's about keeping your own cup topped up at that point. And then finally, you've got that cool blue energy, that need for sort of high accuracy and precision, and things be done not just quickly but correctly. All of a sudden, people are in a world where the rules have been thrown out and policies are changing and ways of working are so different, and they've not necessarily had time to think that through and process what's going on there, and they're being rushed through that process. This real kind of frustration, I guess, kicks in. You almost see like nitpicking from people, like, well, we can't do that, it won't work, can't do that, it won't work. It's like, well, we have to do that and it has to work, because right now we don't have an option. But that can be really challenging for somebody who's got that need for structure and organisation, so that all of a sudden gets thrown out the window overnight. I think in terms of what I'm seeing with conversations I'm having with people and the frustrations is this point of difference. Because actually, we've said before, we're all unique and individual within that. But not only that, but although we're going through this kind of consistent disaster, for want of a better word, all our contexts are completely different. So even if you've got somebody who on the surface seems very similar to you, there are so many other factors here that could be at play that makes their experience of this just purely unique to them. And this idea of, you heard of the Corona coaster. So it's this sort of roller coaster, but I can't remember, I saw it was one of the many things I've been forwarded on WhatsApp. It's amazing. Apologies, I have no idea who to credit that to.
Yeah.
But I think what I've noticed is that people are having these good days and bad days, as we talked about, but they are not happening at the same time. So imagine you've got a group or a team together, and you've got half the team who actually go, do you know what, I'm feeling really good today. I've done my Joe Wicks this morning. I've got a really clear plan of what I'm going to do. I'm in a great mood. And you've got others who go, oh, it's just too tough. Today's really hit me. It's really hard. And I think what we're finding is that this kind of oscillating effect is happening, but to everybody at different points. So from a manager's perspective, so difficult, because actually you go, well, half my team need this right now. The other half need that. You can't have a kind of one size fits all. It's got to be really bespoke. And of course that takes time. I think that's the biggest thing people are sort of being challenged with, is saying, actually, I want to reach out to my team. I want to make sure that they're okay, but I've also got to do everything else around that. And it can be really draining for people. And it's about how you manage your own energy as part of that. It's not easy.
No. Lifelong learning, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing that I've keep hearing cropping up is, this kind of perception of self, identities being questioned and stuff. And I wondered if there was anything that insights or anything around your research that can talk on this.
Yeah, I think this idea of identity is huge. And like you say, at the moment, people have almost been really forced into a very reflective space that many of us would never normally go to, if ever. And I say that as a coach who is actually rubbish at doing reflection, and it's forced me to do much more of it than I normally would have done, because we've had to do things differently and had to almost reassess, where are we at, what's going on, what works for me from a work perspective, what doesn't work for me from a work perspective, and really digging into actually what's important to me as an individual, and how do I recognise that, because that's the first bit, is actually being able to work out what is important to you, what does work. And then be able to say, well, how do I do more of it? And how do I make sure that I'm honouring those parts of me that are important? And it might be that what matters to me now is very different to what mattered to me 10 years ago. And I think it's being comfortable with the idea that we are not fixed. We are a fluid person. We're a complete process of our experience, product of our experience, sorry. And so actually it's almost having that sense check of going, okay, so where am I at the moment? And that might be week by week through this process, or it could be a much kind of longer span period that goes, okay, so what's happening for me? So I mentioned about the kind of extroversion, introversion element, is thinking about, okay, well, where do I get my energy from? Am I somebody that's kind of that externally sourced, that I need to make sure that I've got that regular contact and having those rich, nourishing conversations? Or am I somebody who needs to create some space for myself that says, I just need some downtime just to recharge, to be able to just shut the laptop and not have to talk to anyone on Zoom or do another pub quiz? and that being okay. I think there's a lot of this kind of pressure that we should be a certain way. And I think the biggest thing for me from an insights perspective is saying there is no right or wrong. There is no better or worse way to be, but it's about really making sure that you know how you show up. So both in terms of the impact you have on others, but also the impact you have on yourself and what you're doing to create the life you want to create, rather than just living what you should be living according to someone else's rules.
Yeah, this idea of shoulding all over ourselves is just exhausting. Like, stop the shoulds, just pick the important, really narrow down on those important areas. And I think energy is such an important thing right now. So I really have spent quite a lot of time on this over the last few years personally, because I became obsessed with time management. I became obsessed with productivity, and I was being more and more efficient, and I was being more efficient with my time, and all of these productivity tools that I put in place. And I was chasing time. I was chasing and chasing time. It was getting me nowhere because I was exhausted. Even when I did make a bit of time, I was too tired to use that time. And actually what I realized is, screw time management. It's about energy management. It's about us understanding when we are at our peak, when are we really, so my brain works. I only figured this out as a result of delving into this energy thing, but my mind works its best at 5 o'clock in the morning as soon as I wake up. So when most people are just like kind of, waking up and they need a cup of coffee, that is when my brain, for some reason, is the best. So I'm up at 5, and then I probably have a nap at like 8, because I don't know why, but realizing that just made a huge difference to my day, and recognizing when I was tired, and this is not the time to be productive. This is the time to do yoga, because that's going to ensure that I can be productive when I need to be. Yeah. So looking after our energy like it's a pot of gold.
100%. And I think being really clear who gives us energy and who drains us. Because, and not only who, but tasks, everything. It's working out almost, it's back to my cup thing. It's like what puts more in and where's the cracks and holes. Because actually, if all you've got is that little ball of energy, and it's where you choose to spend it, is your choice. And of course there's certain pressures with work, and there's things we have to do maybe we don't want to do, but then where are you getting that balance? So actually, what are you doing to make sure that you're then topping yourself back up again as part of the process? I think the other thing I was going to just mention was also on decision making. So one of the things to talk about in insights is around whether or not you've got more of a thinking preference, so you make decisions more kind of with your head, or more of a feeling preference with decisions with your heart. And of course we can all do both, but you'll find that people have a preference for one or another. In the same way you've got a preference for being right-handed or left-handed, it's the same kind of idea. We can do both, but we'll have a preference which way. And you often find when decisions have been made, if we really rally against it, or we just think, what are they doing? This is completely the wrong thing to do. It could be that it's based on our preference. So if somebody with a high thinking preference has made the decision and they've communicated it in a thinking way, then somebody with a high feeling preference goes, well, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing that. They haven't thought about any of this. And actually, it can be vice versa. And so I think actually how we communicate decisions to people can really help with that difference of approach. Because, fundamentally, we'll still make the decision that's the right decision for us to make, but actually how we share it with others and recognise that they may have made a different one, or their criteria might have been different, I think is all part of the process of managing those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested, Amy, in what do you think is the biggest thing that Insights has given you, whether it's personally or professionally? What do you think has been, dare I say it, the biggest insight?
Georgie, that is an amazing question. And I find I've just realised, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that, which is actually ridiculous when you think about it. What's been the biggest insight? Gosh. I think it must be, I think this point of our energy has probably been the biggest thing for me in terms of the impact it's had across many parts of my life. So recognising that actually the way that what I need is not what humans need, it's what Amy needs. And I think recognising how that is different from others, and instead of being frustrated by it, being able to respect it. And I would be lying if I said I can do this all the time, and that I live in this like blissful existence where I just have perfect relationships and like I'm so mindful of everyone else. My partner will assure you I am not. But I think if any, it sounds stupid, but things like when I get frustrated, I can climb down the ladder way quicker now than I could have before. Because instead of me, I still go to that really personal hurt place of going, oh, it's not fair. But I go, wait, hang on a minute. What's going on here? Like, is this about you, or is this about just the situation? And how can you take some steps back? So I definitely think that element of not the sort of finger pointing we were talking about before, being able to react to something rather than respond to it. Respond to it rather than react to it, I think has been key. And for me, that energy piece has been really probably the most obvious. And recognizing the difference in how, so I have a really high extroversion preference, as you can probably tell. So I speak very quickly. I've got no idea what's going to come out of my mouth until it comes out of my mouth. But realizing that other people don't do that. So when they're sat in a meeting across the table from me and not saying anything, and I started thinking, well, they're not engaged, are they bored, they don't understand. Actually, it's none of those things. It's the fact that they're thinking really deeply and reflecting, and they'll come out with an absolute corker at the end. But I wouldn't necessarily have recognized that before. I'd have panicked and filled the silence, which probably would have made it worse. So I think that's the big one for me, is being able to just really appreciate that difference and recognize that what I need and what they need is different.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy. I want to, before we leave, where can people find out more? Where should they go and find you?
So my website is teamflair.co.uk. And please do feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do that. I'm also doing virtual coffees with people at the moment. So if you fancy a proper chat, then by all means you can book through the website to have a one-to-one chat with me as well, and share more about this. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions and things that people have got through LinkedIn or the website, whichever works best.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Another Change Cafe done. Thanks all.
Bye.